What happens when the kindness you see is the disguise for the danger you don't? When the hand that feeds you is also the hand that locks the door? Is genuine warmth simply a trick, or can true evil wear a smile so wide it reaches the eyes? In the sun-drenched, dust-red hills of a bustling Nigerian estate, a life built on trust was slowly being strangled by a secret. The key conflict wasn't a loud fight or a sudden betrayal, but the creeping, quiet dread of realization. The stakes. Everything. A daughter's future, a mother's sanity, and the very foundation of what it meant to be safe in one's own home. This isn't just a story about a friendly neighbor. It's a story about the devastating distance between what we want to believe and what the painful truth demands we see. Before her world became a cage, there was Amina. A hard-working woman. A loving mother. A seeker of peace. Welcome to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every truth demands to be heard. Now, before we begin, where in the world are you watching from? Is it morning in Lagos, evening in Nairobi, or midnight in London? Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Now, lean in. Because this isn't just about what happened, it's about the silent war fought inside a trusted compound wall. The sun in the estate of Golden Gates was a generous, golden thing, spilling light over the manicured lawns and the high, protective walls. Amina felt truly blessed to live there. After years of struggling in the crowded heart of the city, she had saved enough from her small tailoring business to secure a modest 3-bedroom house here, a safe haven for her and her 5-year-old daughter, Zara. Her immediate neighbor, Mr. Ben, was the epitome of neighborly warmth. A sturdy man with a laugh that boomed like a cheerful drum and a habit of always offering a helping hand, he was the first person Amina had truly learned to trust in the estate. He'd bring Zara sweets, fix Amina's leaky tap without asking for a dime, and often kept a watchful eye on her compound while she was away at the market, treating her home with a casual, protective ownership that made her feel safe. His wife, Clara, was equally sweet, sharing recipes and gossip over the low dividing wall. Amina often thought, this is what community looks like. This is what peace feels like. But peace, like a fragile glass, can hide the cracks within it until it shatters. The first sign of the shift was subtle, almost forgettable. It was the afternoon Amina couldn't find her spare key. She had a strict rule: the spare was always hidden under the same stone by the mango tree. When she went to retrieve it, the stone was slightly ajar, and the space beneath was empty. A rat, perhaps, she thought, dismissing the uneasy flutter in her stomach, even though the key was never placed loosely, but wrapped securely in a small rag. She mentioned it casually to Mr. Ben later that evening, and he had chuckled, his large frame shaking with mirth. "Oh, Amina, my sister, you are worrying for nothing. This estate is the safest in the state. Maybe Zara played with it. I will keep an extra eye out for you, don't worry your head." His reassurance was a powerful bomb, and Amina felt foolish for her suspicion. She changed the lock anyway, a decision Mr. Ben praised her for, saying, "Better safe than sorry, even in paradise." Yet, the feeling persisted, a tiny, cold needle prick in the back of her mind. Zara swore she hadn't touched the key, and the previous lock had been perfectly fine. The true emotional weight began to settle when the seemingly innocent generosity of Mr. Ben started to feel like an obligation. He began showing up exactly when Amina needed to leave for her tailoring guild meeting, insisting on waiting with Zara until she returned, even when his own wife, Clara, was home. "Clara is preparing dinner, and I'm bored," he'd declare, making it impossible to refuse without appearing rude or ungrateful. One day, Amina had quickly hidden a small emergency cash envelope in a new spot behind a row of books before stepping out. When she returned, Mr. Ben was gone, and Zara was asleep. As she checked on the envelope, the books were slightly misaligned, and the envelope, while still there, felt thinner. She counted it quickly. 50 naira was missing, a negligible amount, but a deliberate one. The fear was no longer about a misplaced key, It was about a presence that felt too close, too aware of her routines, and too invested in her absence. She found herself watching him, the man she trusted, her supposed guardian. She tried to test the waters. She told Mr. Ben she had decided to hire a permanent security guard, a young relative from the village, to help around the compound and watch Zora. The reaction she received was shocking. Mr. Ben's smile vanished, replaced by a look of sharp, calculated disapproval. "Amina, are you mad? Why would you bring a strange village boy into this peaceful estate? They are untrustworthy, full of village ways and trouble. I am here, my brother, to watch over you. Have I ever asked for anything? Do you not trust me?" His voice wasn't booming with laughter anymore, it was low, intense, and edged with genuine menace, a tone that made Zora, who was playing nearby, pause and look up with wide, scared eyes. Amina quickly apologized, profusely, but the scene had cracked the illusion completely. The question was no longer if something was wrong, but what Mr. Ben was hiding, and why her decision to introduce a simple layer of security had caused such an alarming, visceral reaction in her friendly neighbor. The warmth was gone, replaced by a chilling suspicion that she was not being protected, she was being watched. The emotional burden of that suspicion became her constant companion. Amina started pulling back, making excuses, avoiding Mr. Ben's unsolicited visits, and lying about her travel plans. She changed her routine entirely, even waking up earlier to take detours to the market, just to avoid his friendly inquiries about her day. It was exhausting, this performance of normalcy in the face of creeping dread. One evening, as she was doing laundry, she overheard a conversation between Mr. Ben and an unknown man over his fence, spoken in a hushed, rapid dialect. She only caught one word, but it was enough to make her blood turn to ice: passport. The next morning, a casual inquiry at the estate office about the deeds of her house revealed another unsettling detail. Mr. Ben's official documents listed his occupation not as a simple businessman, as he had always claimed, but as a liaison officer, and the official estate records showed he had been granted the permission to manage the security cameras for her side of the street due to an alleged technical fault with the central system. Amina looked out her window at her neighbor, his back turned as he tended his flowers, and a horrifying thought crystallized in her mind: her neighbor wasn't just friendly, he was the security system. And the system had been programmed to fail her. Amina's hands began to shake as the pieces snapped together like a cheap lock finally giving way. The missing key, the 50 naira, the intense disapproval of a security guard, the passport. Mr. Ben wasn't a watchful brother, he was a gatekeeper. But a gatekeeper to what? She walked to the estate entrance, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, and spoke to the official guard, Mr. Adebayo. She asked innocently about the liaison officer who was managing the street cameras. Mr. Adebayo looked confused. "Madam Amina, there is no liaison officer. The cameras on your street have been broken for 6 months, waiting for parts. Mr. Ben, he is just a resident. A helpful one, yes, but nothing more." Amina thanked him, her voice sounding strange and hollow to her own ears. The cameras were broken. Mr. Ben had lied, not just about his role, but about the very tool he used to justify his presence. He wasn't watching the cameras, he was watching her. Her entire world had been built on the illusion of his generosity, and the reality was a suffocating net woven by deceit. The emotional test of this chapter was how Amina would transform her terror into a strategic defense. She knew she couldn't confront him. His reaction to the simple mention of a guard showed the volatile danger beneath his amiable facade. She had to become an actress, a spy in her own home. She began leaving small, deliberate clues. She spoke loudly on the phone, inventing a fictional sister named Gloria, who was due to arrive from the US with her husband next week. "Yes, Gloria, bring all those documents, the special ones. We will hide them safely here." She made sure Mr. Ben, who was conveniently watering his flowers, could overhear every word. The next morning, she noticed a ladder leaning against the side of his house, unused. He was planning to search. Amina's immediate instinct was to flee, but her daughter, Zara, was due to start a new school soon, and moving now would mean losing everything she had worked for, losing her stability, and exposing them both completely. The challenge was to beat him at his own game. The moral strain intensified when Mr. Ben, sensing a new tension, offered a gesture of overwhelming kindness. He showed up with a brand new, expensive bicycle for Zara's upcoming birthday, completely unannounced. A gift from her favorite Uncle Ben, he announced, his smile genuine, his eyes, however, were still probing, assessing her reaction. Amina watched Zara's face light up with pure, unadulterated joy, and the sight was a knife twist in her soul. She had to accept the gift, had to maintain the charade, knowing that this kindness was nothing more than an investment in her trust, an attempt to smooth over the cracks of suspicion. She hugged him, the lie sticking in her throat. "Thank you, Mr. Ben. You are too good to us." But the words felt like poison. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching his house. The tension was palpable, a slow, silent duel between a predator and his prey, played out over a shared garden wall and a birthday bicycle. The truth began to surface in the form of Clara, Mr. Ben's sweet wife. Clara often seemed tired, withdrawn, and hesitant whenever Amina spoke of Mr. Ben's extreme helpfulness. One afternoon, while they were sharing a cup of tea, Amina watched Clara's eyes. They were bruised with a profound, unspoken sadness. Amina pushed gently, "Clara, I know this is difficult, but I'm worried. I think Mr. Ben is not who he says he is." Clara's cup rattled on the saucer, her eyes darting nervously toward her own home. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper, "Amina, there is a small room, locked. Under the stairs. I am never allowed there. He brings people, late at night. Important-looking people. He lives with them and returns before dawn. His work, it is not what you think. It is about moving things, and sometimes, people." Clara's fear was infectious, a cold hand gripping Amina's throat. She had given Amina a piece of the puzzle, a terrifying hint that her neighbor was not a common thief, but something far more sinister, and that his kindness to her had been a strategic cover for something dark and organized, perhaps involving human trafficking or contraband. This whispered revelation gave Amina the final push she needed. She understood the whole game now. The estate was his quiet hub, she was his perfect cover, and her empty house was an easy staging ground, which is why he had to control her movements and the keys. The missing key was to make a copy. The missing money was a confidence check. The opposition to the guard was to maintain his access. Amina did not need a physical fight, she needed an undeniable piece of evidence. The next day, she told Mr. Ben she had to travel for 3 days to visit her sick sister Gloria. He offered to keep the keys, and this time, Amina happily complied, handing him the spare set she had made. As he watched her drive off, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips, Amina drove for exactly 3 minutes, parked her car down the street, and crept back. She watched from a concealed spot near the gate. It took Mr. Ben less than 30 minutes to let himself into her house. He was not there to water her plants. Amina waited, watching the door close quietly behind him, and knew with a bone-deep certainty, the true terror wasn't the man next door, it was the realization that she had given the wolf the key to her lamb's nursery. Amina had not returned to her house to retrieve anything, she had returned to set a trap. Before she left, under the guise of packing, she had placed a tiny, GPS-enabled camera, bought and tested weeks ago, inside the decorative box on her coffee table, aimed directly at the front door and the small corridor leading to the bedrooms. Now, sitting hunched over her phone in her parked car, using the estate's public Wi-Fi signal, she watched the live stream. Mr. Ben moved with a quick efficiency she had never witnessed, his boisterous friendliness replaced by the cold focus of a professional. He went straight to the lockable storage unit she kept in the corner, which she had deliberately left unlocked. Inside, she had placed a single, empty suitcase. Mr. Ben rummaged through her drawers, confirming she was gone, then he pulled out his own phone. He sent a single text message and then, chillingly, he walked to the back door, opened it, and propped it slightly ajar. Amina watched in mounting horror as her safe haven was now actively being opened to the outside world, ready for whatever dark cargo was about to arrive. The moment came 20 minutes later. A plain, unmarked white van pulled up slowly to the back wall of her compound, well hidden from the main road. The driver exchanged a quick, silent signal with Mr. Ben. Then, the van doors opened, and a heartbreaking scene unfolded on Amina's phone screen. Not contraband. Not documents. But 3 young girls, looking disoriented and utterly terrified, were being led out of the van. They were silent, their eyes wide with a fear that only children facing the unknown can possess. Mr. Ben, the man who brought Sarah sweets, was now a shepherd leading these girls to slaughter. He spoke to them in a harsh, rapid tongue, pushing them quickly into the house and directly toward the corridor. That small room under his own stairs that Clara had mentioned was not a storage unit, it was a holding cell. The discovery was a punch to the gut. Mr. Ben was part of a terrifying, international human trafficking network, and Amina's home was his temporary, suburban depot. Amina knew she couldn't call the police, not yet. The network was likely deeper, and a single arrest might simply move the operation. She needed to save the girls first. She used the estate's emergency communication system, which was for resident-to-resident use only, not connected to the external police line. She sent a frantic, disguised message to Clara. "Clara, I left my medication in the garden shed. I need it now. Can you check my shed? I think Mr. Ben is in my house and may have seen me leave it there." Clara, already terrified and burdened by her husband's secret, understood the urgency. Minutes later, the camera showed Clara walking purposefully across the garden, carrying a small jug, and deliberately tripping over a gardening hose right by the back wall. The jug flew, the water splattered everywhere, soaking Mr. Ben's shoes and creating a momentary, loud diversion that pulled him away from the house to curse and clean up. In that fleeting window of chaos, Amina sprinted from her car, ran to the open back door, and slipped into her own home. The 3 girls were huddled in the corridor, too paralyzed by fear to scream. Amina didn't speak. She grabbed the first girl by the hand, motioning urgently to the others. "Follow me. Now." She led them not to the front gate, but to a small, seldom used side exit in her compound wall, a weak point she had noticed during her intense surveillance. They were halfway through when Mr. Ben, alerted by the sudden movement in the house, came storming back, his face a mask of rage and true, terrifying evil. "Amina! What are you doing? You betrayer," he bellowed. The chase was short, fueled by his shock and her desperation. As he lunged at her, Amina screamed, a primal sound that cut through the quiet estate. That scream was the final trigger. It was the sound that brought neighbors out of their houses and, most importantly, brought Mr. Adebayo, the estate guard, running with a whistle. The sight of Mr. Ben, the friendly neighbor, the community man, clutching Amina's arm with a look of pure, murderous fury, while 3 frightened children scrambled out of her compound, was all the evidence anyone needed. Mr. Adebayo, seeing the girls and the desperate struggle, didn't hesitate. He tackled Mr. Ben to the ground. The moment the children were safe and Mr. Ben was restrained, Amina made the official call. The ensuing investigation, driven by the evidence from Amina's tiny camera, uncovered the full, dark truth. Mr. Ben was indeed a liaison officer, a local recruiter and temporary custodian for an international network. Amina had lost a neighbor, but she had saved 3 lives, and in doing so, had found the courage she never knew she possessed. She realized her neighbor was not just friendly, he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And in her heart, she knew that true vigilance was not about seeing the danger that arrived, but seeing the danger that stayed and offered you a cup of sugar. Amina did not become a hero in the headlines. She simply kept her shop, raised her daughter, and sponsored the education of the 3 rescued girls. But 5 years later, she stood with them, watching Zora ride her bicycle, the very gift that had once represented a lie, and she knew she had chosen correctly. Not because she outsmarted the villain, but because she chose to listen to the tiny, cold needle of her intuition. The universal truth is that the greatest battles are often fought against the deception closest to your gate. And a heart that chooses to trust its inner voice over a convincing smile, and character over comfort, will always break free from the finest spun web of lies. If this story moved you, hit like, share it, and tell me in the comments, what is the most important lesson your gut has ever taught you? Subscribe to Stories by the King, where love wins, and purpose finds its home.